All right. It's nice to see you back. It was pretty empty this morning, so for some reasons. Anyway, so this is the last session of SMC 2022. Well, I'm pretty happy, actually. Anyway, before we start this final session, I just want to remind you that it would be very nice if you could vote for the Best Presentation Award. Don't forget to do it. You can do it until 5, well, did I say 5 p.m.? Yeah, 5 p.m. today. You received an email about it. There is a Google form. At the beginning, we gave you like these little like papers, but it's not very practical. So so we set the form instead. Okay. So please vote. Like those of you who already gave us the vote with the paper, we'll take it into account. Don't worry about this. But for the others, please vote through the form. Okay. And we'll give the results of the vote at 5:30 for the closing ceremony. There are 3 awards that will be given this year. Anyway, I will now hand on the microphone to Sylvain Williamson, who's going to present the next session.
Thank you, Roman. And maybe we should all thank Roman for all of this, what he's done. It's really been an amazing conference, so thank you. Anyway, let's continue to the session, and we will start with Cheryl Connor, who will present the paper together with who she wrote together with Prithvi Kantan and Stefania Serafin on the development of a real-time movement sonification extra game for body weight squat training.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cheryl Connor. I am a guest student at Aalborg University. The project I'm presenting today was developed in collaboration with Prithvi Kantan and Serafin. And it revolved around the development of a real-time movement sonification extra game for bodyweight squat training. And so the motivation behind this project stemmed from the limited options for exercise training for people living with visual disabilities. So I wanted to explore how movement sonification, and for anybody unfamiliar, that is the transformation of body motion into sound. I wanted to explore how that technique could be used for exercise training, specifically in the absence of visual input. And so I set out to design an application that would allow these users, so specifically users who have a reduction in visual or have a visual impairment, I set out to design an application that would allow them to exercise independently, but ideally give them some agency or a feeling of greater control over their own body, and as well as over their exercise regimen. So with that, my goal turned into developing an auditory-only system that would provide real-time movement sonification feedback for exercise instruction, but also one that prioritized that the users performing those exercises safely and correctly. So the exercise I chose for this project was the bodyweight squat, and I chose this because it's frequently, it's commonly used in activities of daily living such as standing and sitting. I developed the application using the Azure Connect, Unity Game Engine, and Faust programming language. I used the joint coordinates from the Connect in order to identify or monitor 4 core criteria of an ideal squat movement. So I was able to outline what that criteria would be based off of an interview I had with a physiotherapist. And so the conclusion we came to is that the first one is having the proper stance. So that's making sure that your feet are at least shoulder width apart. The second one is making sure that you are not having excessive flexion in the knee angle. So that's making sure that you're not bending your knee to an angle that's less than 90 degrees. The third would be knee alignment, so making sure that your toes don't go over the knees. And I'm sorry, it's a PDF, so unfortunately these are GIFs, not just pictures of my feet. I apologize for that. But yeah, so I'll just show you instead. Yes, so proper foot position, right? Proper stance. Making sure that you're not bending beyond 90 degrees or so less than 90 degrees. I don't have that range of motion, but you always want to keep your thighs parallel with the ground. Making sure that your knees are not going over your toes, right? So that's bad form, and that's definitely something we want to correct when it happens. And the fourth is monitoring balance and weight shifting. So this is important for two reasons. The first being we want to make sure that the user doesn't fall over, but also we want to make sure that when you're in your proper stance, you're pushing up through the heels in order to get back to that standing position, right? To reduce any unnecessary pressure on the knees. So once I was able to identify those criteria, I then set out to figure out what would be the ideal sonification strategy. What would be something that's useful and informative for the users, but also doesn't overwhelm them. And so I decided to use a flute physical model, which was developed in Faust. And I mapped that criteria to the sound parameters of the model. So those parameters included modulating the tube length, as well as the mouth position, and the amount of pressure applied to the model. So if you're interested in hearing some of those mappings, or if you want to just get an afternoon workout, please feel free to visit me at my demo station, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We continue with the next paper by Jean-Jacques Giardot and Jean-François Mignard, which is the title, The Game Master, a Tool for Concrete Music Composers.
Okay. So what should I, what am I supposed to do?
One of your slides should be
It's there, yes. Oh, good. Yes. It works. Okay. Okay, and I use arrows. Okay. Okay, so I will be presenting a tool which is named the Game Master, and it's a tool for composer of music concrete. I developed that with the help of Jean-François Mignard, which is somewhere in the room, and you can contact us as these addresses. This software was born 3 years ago as software for interactive electronic installation, so something quite simple. The idea was just to be able to play clips that are short bits of music and interact with some captors, sensors with the public. In these 3 years, we have found that the software could have more than one use and provide very interesting point of view about the clips. The fact that it choose randomly some clips or according to some internal algorithm gave us some quite interesting sonification, clip playing together one after the other. That was quite interesting. So we developed this aspect, and we arrived to the tool, which is still work in process, but which is not really a synthesizer, which is not an audio effect, which is not intelligent. It just play clips, but it allows you to play clips with many variations. Just one short presentation of the implementation. The system is written as a collection of plugins written in JSFX which is an internal language for Reaper. So to use the system, you need to have Reaper. On the other hand, Reaper is a pretty good digital workstation and quite cheap. So these plugins comport the Game Master itself, which controls everything on where the algorithms are developed. The players, which are independent plugins, each one can play one clip, and one clip can be played on any of the 64 output channels of the system. And also MIDI handlers, which are generic or specific to some specific MIDI controller, which listen to the MIDI input from this controller and generate MIDI output to this controller. For example, you may use something like push buttons and have this button light, green, red, or other. So this is done by the MIDI handler. And we also have a limiter compressor, which is applied to the final output. The implementation really is to play clips, not apply specific effects to them. You can create your own clips by applying any effect you want, and we are just interested in the way the clip behaves together. So inside the system there is an integrated script language that lets you develop your own algorithm. It's a functional, preemptive multithreading, on-the-fly programming. And what can it be used for? We have used this as an ambient electroacoustic music generator. It was nice to create soundscape. We use it as a tool for concert. It offers very interesting rendering live situation where, for example, the composer can choose option offered by the system, select one, select another, change some parameters. It's also a tool from live performance, from completely interactive to live like Ableton, or even live coding where you just can program. And it's also a very nice studio system where you can discover new aspects of your sounds. Okay, so thank you for your attention, and come and see our unique hand-draw-made poster.
Thank you very much. The next paper is presented by Francesco Ganis, and he wrote this paper together with Stefania Serafin and Mariana Vatti, and it's titled Tickle Tuner, Haptic Smartphone Cover for Cochlear Implant Users Music Training. Take it away.
Thank you, and hi everyone, I'm Francesco Ganis, and I'm here to present the Tickle Tuner, that is an haptic smartphone cover with the aim to help people with cochlear implants in their musical training. So I think especially yesterday you heard about cochlear implants and how they work, so I think I will skip the theory, but bear in mind that a few aspects of cochlear implants. Definitely the first one is that it is a great device that helps to restore hearing for people that has hearing loss, but a hearing nerve that is working. But on the other hand, it has some issues when we are talking of very complex signals like music. So in this case, we have issues with timbre and also pitch and spatialization. So for our project, we started with some sketches and some ideas to how to convey haptic feedback to during these training sections. So we came up with a cover for a smartphone, since it's one of the most used devices in our everyday life. Yeah. So we started with clay, actually, like kids, but to create a handle that was quite ergonomic, so easy to grab. And using photogrammetry, we recreated the model in 3D, and combined with OpenSCAD code, we obtained the final model through different iterations. As an internal circuitry, we have quite a fairly simple circuit, I think. It's based on a USB-C connector with a DAC that retrieves both the power and also the signal from the cell phone, and feeds a stereo amplifier of 3 watts, if I remember well. And one channel goes to the audio jack, and another channel goes to the haptic feedback actuators. So this is a dual mono configuration. And a small note about the actuators is that they have a great frequency range, even like too much for the tactile feedback, and they have also a very good linearity. So this is the prototype, how it looks like right now. And yeah, you can also find in the poster boot a test bench together with the cell phone and the cover that is made using pure data and MabuPlat. So pure data is obviously for the audio generation, while MabuPlat is for the graphical user interface. And the features different sound generators, but also filters for the like compensation of both the frequency response of the device, so to have like a flat response, and also it's possible to compensate the fingertip sensitivity. And in the last image, you can find also a pitch tracking interface where you can basically retrieve in real time up to 4 partials of the signal that you are playing, and for example choose the level, like the loudness of each partial, or do some other interesting trials with the haptic feedback. So for future work, definitely we want to implement a wireless communication, since right now you have to use a cable. And also, actually we have already some user tests that we are finalizing, and this is one of the images from the test, where basically you are asked to recognize melody contours. And also we want to investigate how training can affect the capabilities of training with a haptic feedback. So yeah, that's the project, and I hope to see you at the poster and try also the prototype, because it's there. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco. The next paper is titled Scramble Live, Combining LSTM and Markov Chains for Real-Time Musical Interaction, by Nicola Privato, Omar Rampedo, and Alberto Novello. Are they present? Possibly not. We can continue to the next paper then, titled Wavetable-Inspired Artificial Neural Network Synthesis, by Nicolas Solem.
Thank you. All right, my name is Nicholas Solem, and I am a PhD candidate in computer music at University of California, San Diego. Today we're going to be talking about wavetable-inspired artificial neural network synthesis. So basically the motivation of this project is to create a multidimensional wavetable synthesizer, and I want to be able to use custom user wavetables, but the problem of that is that design of wavetables is quite time-consuming, especially in higher dimensions. And so also the method should be used to explore the timbre space of an audio file independently of the timings. And it is intended to be expanded in the near future, with other synthesis methods such as additive to fill out some of the gaps that wavetable synthesis cannot accomplish. So some of the design considerations include that timbre is divorced from time, as I mentioned, and that abstraction and exploration is preferred over realism and reconstruction, and that phase contributes negligibly to timbre, but it adds a lot of difficulty in training, and so we discard phase. And perceptual timbral characteristics are dependent on pitch and loudness, and so that's actually something that a lot of wavetable synthesizers do not take into account, but we do in this project. And some of the assumed constraints for analysis include periodicity and monophony. However, the user is encouraged to break these constraints because you can still attain interesting sounds, even if the analysis is bad. All right, so why are we using a neural network for this? Because in the design process, it was first considered to use closest match of user input and just interpolate between two waveforms that actually exist in the audio file. But of course, it's easier to reconstruct the original signal this way. But the problem is that when you have a sparse multidimensional data set, it's not continuous enough in practice. And we also want to be able to interpolate and extrapolate between timbres. And we want to be able to navigate continuously through the timbre space. So a great solution for that is an artificial neural network. So here's the basic layout of the process. We have the analysis, the training, and the synthesis. And here's the layout of the analysis process, where you take in a raw audio file and you split it up into frames and analyze them for loudness, pitch, and inharmonicity. And each frame then is transferred to the frequency domain, where we can attain the perceptual characteristic, the psychoacoustic features that we care about, which is the bark frequency cepstral coefficients. Now this is basically a concise way to describe a psychoacoustically distributed spectrum. So these are the features that become the inputs to the neural network. And this is a layout of the network, simplified. So the outputs, as you can see, are actually spectral magnitudes. So we're constructing a frequency domain waveform, and then we're going to be transferring it into the time domain. And the important thing about that is that it requires that you resample the waveform so that a single period occupies the wavelength. And here's the synthesis implementation. So it takes in pitch, loudness, and all your perceptual features, and they feed into the neural network, which predicts a new spectrum, and we transfer the spectrum into a new waveform in the time domain at the proper frequency. Now let's hear an audio example. Oh no, it's the sound is not going through the right interface. How do you do this? All right, thank you. Sorry about the trouble at the end, but Feel free to talk with me at my booth, and I've got more audio examples there if you're curious. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Roman here to maybe have the... Yeah, maybe you can go get him. Then in the meantime, that might be a good point. Let me check that out while the next person is coming up. It's the paper titled Creating Experiments with CosmoNote, Advancing Web-Based Annotations for Performed Music by Daniel Bedoya, Lawrence Fief, and Elaine Chu.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Daniel Bedoya, and I'll be presenting the demo for creating experiments with CosmoNote, advancing web-based annotations for performed music, in collaboration with Lawrence Fife and Elaine Chu of the STMS lab at IRCAM. So to give you a little bit of context, I'm going to explain what is CosmoNote. So CosmoNote is a web-based annotation platform that you can access at the URL cosmonote.ircam.fr. Is open to the public, and the interface looks a little bit like this. I'm going to be explaining how it works. CosmoNote allows its users to listen for, to learn, and to, of course, annotate structures in performed music. So we focus in performed music instead of just symbolic music, and we gather annotations from participants in a citizen science paradigm, which means that our participants are mostly volunteer participants whose main occupation is not necessarily music related. So they can be novices or they can be experts. I'm not going to be explaining here how CosmoNote works. I'm going to be explaining that in the demo, but I'm going to give you some context about its features. So there are some visual layers that we can display. For example, the classic waveform, piano roll, and the pedals. So at first we are focusing on solo piano music, but again, it's performed music, so either recorded or digitized from piano rolls. And then we have music descriptors such as loudness, tempo, and tension. And of course, there are a lot of descriptors or visualizations that can be displayed in CosmoNote. They just have to be synchronized with the audio. There are 4 annotation types in CosmoNote. There are boundaries, which are time-based points that have 4 levels of intensity. There are regions, which are selections in time with a start and an end. Note groups, which are selections of individual notes in the piano roll. And we have also comments, which are annotations that are specifically made to mark salient or out of the ordinary things that our users can identify. All of these annotations can have their own labels and can be edited with the interface. So in the input data configuration side, we have many reconfigurable tools and visuals. So that means that we can have the citizen-sized experiments, and we can also have custom experimental designs, which is the subject of the demonstration today. This is possible thanks to 3 types of documents. We have the pieces themselves, which are the music that you're going to be seeing and annotating. They contain the audio, the MIDI, and any other associated information. We have the collections, which are ensemble of pieces that can be grouped by shared properties. For example, composer, performer, or even by thematic grouping, like composers of the 20th century. Or we can have a group based on a stimuli that we are using for an experiment. These collections have different options that we can specify for each piece, for example, how we show the interface, what the user is going to see, and how it's going to be able to use the tool. And then we have the third document, which is the users. A file is created for each user that goes to CosmoNote. And this file, amongst other things, contains user roles. These roles are assigned so that they allow us to show people a different collection and thus different pieces and different visualizations. So I'm going to be going into more detail of these in the booth. So we have different experimental conditions, some that are restricted. We can have very little interaction or capabilities. And we can also have unrestricted conditions where all features are available. So I would encourage you to come see me at the booth. I'm going to be showing how we can annotate in CosmoNote and how we design experiments with it. Thank you for your attention.
Should we do a sound check maybe before, or do you have sound in your? Okay, okay. Cool. So then we continue with the paper titled Calliope, a co-creative interface for multi-track music generation by Renaud Boguem-Chemub, Jeff Enns and Philippe Pasquier.
Thanks a lot, Sylvain. I'm Philippe Pasquier, or Renaud could not make it. And I'm coming to you from Vancouver in British Columbia at Simon Fraser University, where I direct the Meta Creation Lab, which is a lab looking at the partial and or complete automation of creative tasks and the automation of creative tools. We do that across domain, but today I'm going to talk about computer-assisted composition, therefore music, and the Calliope system. The Calliope system is a wrapper around our new multi-track music machine, which is a symbolic music generation model based on a transformer architecture with 16 bars of attention. It is the most versatile music generation model at the moment. It supports an unlimited number of tracks and allow for MIDI instrument selection without limitations. And it does way more controls than previous models, and a lot of musical controls can be really controlled when generating with these particular models. Classic musical controls, as well as high-level emotional, affective controls and musical styles, and so on. It has been trained, this MMM model, on the MetaMIDI Dataset, which we released at Izmir last year, which is the largest symbolic music dataset out there. And the model is successful enough to have been picked up by the industry, so it's in the process of being integrated into Elias Composer Studio, which is a tool for composers of game music. In game music, variations are important, and the model is really, really good at making variations. We're working on an Ableton plugin forthcoming. Pia here is our lovely developer for that plugin. And then it's been picked up by our friends from Teenage Engineering, a company from Sweden that developed synthesizers. And within the synthesizers, the model will allow to generate patterns. We made music with it. Others are making music with it. In fact, you should go to the Music AI contest and vote for our team's entry this year. And we're working with Timbre right now. We're considering adopting it on an evaluation study, not just usability and competence of the model, because the model is actually quite good already, but more in terms of agency and phenomenology. Does people using those generative music systems feel that they still have authorship of the music? And for professional, how do they feel about it? Of course, those companies are also interested in beginners, people who buy their software but will never finish a track. Can it help in those cases too? So, Calliope is a web-based interface that is a free-to-use version of to access the model. It does allow you to generate from scratch, but typically the model knows so much music. It's been listening to much more music than any human can and trained on it. So many styles of music are encompassed by that model that you don't want to generate from scratch, because you're going to end up with medieval music that you might not want to work on, or to hard rock or techno or whatever. So usually you load MIDI files to start with, and then you can add new tracks, regenerate some tracks, condition on all the other tracks, or you can select bars or on one or several tracks to regenerate and iteratively converge to other composition that you find is interesting. You can control, we didn't include in a Calliope all of the controls, but we have note density, polyphony, which is quite important. If you have synthesizers, you know, they have a limited number of voices. If you want to make a melody, you don't want it to be polyphonic, etc., etc. The note length and other controls. Importantly, you can control the instrument. And if you generate a track for a piccolo, it's not going to be the same as if you generate a track for a guitar or a bass, of course. It does generate drums as well. And there's global settings, temperature, which will give you the craziness of the generation, can be conservative or with more entropy. And some other controls that allow you to make variations of entire songs and pieces by decided, oh, I want to resample 50% of the bars of that piece randomly selected and things like that. Finally, it has a batch generation feature. A batch generation feature that allows you to generate hundreds, thousands of variation of a piece and then finally, it allows you to rank those generated material according to another piece. So for example, you can rank all the variations according to the original or rank all the variations you generated according to another piece. All right, so that's it for it. You can access it online through this QR code, and I'll take the opportunity that I have 30 seconds more to invite you to attend the third AI Music Creativity Conference, which we started a few years ago. This year it's in Japan at Riken, but it will be mostly online, unfortunately. And then there's a special issue of on Music AI coming out in the journal for simulation of music creativity, which I get to be the editor of. And then we are delivering a number of music AI tutorials and workshops, some of them being online. So if you're interested in music AI, just join us. And finally, I see that in this conference, a lot of people are working with movement and embodiment, and I want to recommend the ACM Movement and Computation conference that we started a few years ago, which is a good forum for this type of work as well. And with all that, I want to thank my funding buddies and you guys.
Thank you very much. Then we continue with a paper titled An Interactive Music Infilling Interface for Pop Music Composition by Rui Guo.
I'm going to play from this. Hello everyone, I'm Rui Guo from University of Sussex, and I'm very happy to here to present an interactive music infilling interface for pop music composition. And actually, I don't know if it's a coincidence that this is just after Professor Basquet's talk. Actually, my research is very similar to the previous talk, but today I would like to present it not from a demo view, but from maybe the usage and applications viewpoint to tell what is music infilling and what is really good for infilling and the potential usage for it. So infilling actually is used in NLP before, especially for the paper exploring the limits of transfer learning with unified text. It's called Google T5, and it's a very famous model in the NLP. And you can see in this picture, the original test was marks, for example, for inviting was deleted, and the last was deleted, and in the input, a special token replaced the original text, and the target is just to output what is missing in this text. So if music was represented in a text form, actually it can also do the similar things. So the music infilling means that to generate the missing part of the song. For example, here there are 3 tracks in this score. The melody is missing and the second bar is missing. So the target of this is to regenerate the melody given the bass and harmony, and also to generate the second bar given the other surrounding music information. So it actually, by definition, music infilling itself is context aware by its nature. So you can see that it would like to reconstruct the thing. Maybe I don't like to call it reconstruct, maybe generate the new thing. So I'd like to show you some examples. Here, the left picture is from John Lennon's Imagine, and we can have a listen to the original song. Mm. I mean, it should be.
It's in the headphones. It's a mixer, yeah. It's on.
Mm.
Can you maybe just try to unplug this and then keep the microphone?
So after I generate the new melody and harmony, it is sound like this. Okay, I will omit the rest part. And there's another example. Actually, I'd like to see if people can tell what's, I mean, the original song. And after this song is infilled, the new version is like this. I think the speaker has some rendering issues about this. Yeah, but actually it sounds like a totally different song and not the original song. So why do we need infilling? Actually, it can provide the structure, actually, and also provide the harmony. Actually, it means that the backbone of the original song is the same, but to add some different flash on that backbone. Also, it is possible to do the basic generation function like a continuation or generated from scratch. So my infilling system actually has nearly the same parameters as the previous talk, so I omit it here. Yeah, and also I'd like to say this solves the AI music generation issues proposed by Anna Huang from the AI song context, and it is published the paper in ISMIR 2020. So the decomposable, context-aware, and steerable issues can also be solved by this interface. Yeah, and this is the interface, and if you come to my poster, I would like to show it. Actually, yeah, I will show this later in my booth, and yeah, and also it can maybe work like AlphaGo to give us new idea, like give some new structure not exist in the input data. And also, there's no limit for imagination. For example, the musicians can do the piece over a number of songs, and to give some new structure, new harmony, to infill get a new flash. Actually, I would like to say I also have a new version of the interface, which is not in this paper. It's an Ableton Live plugin, which is easier to use. And if you come to my booth, I would like to show that thing, which is not revealed here. Okay, merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Sorry about these sound issues. It still doesn't work. It's plugged in, or it was plugged in, but the mixer doesn't seem to receive any sound. Yeah, so maybe watch out. Thank you, Roman. Great, now we can continue with sound. To the next paper, which is called Reconstructing Prehistoric Music Technologies, Archaeological Explorations of Humans as Designers by Miriam Kolar.
Where do I find my slides? Hey everybody, good afternoon, good morning, whatever time it is for you. Yeah. Maybe we're beyond time at this point, I'm not sure. So I'm gonna take us back a lot of hops into the prehistoric, and I don't even see mine, but it's there in the directory, yes. Oh, what happened? I'm sorry. I didn't close it, did I?
No, it's
Demo 2.
demo 2, but it's in there.
Sorry. We can't find it. Didn't get downloaded.
Did you just upload it? Or?
No. You missed me.
Wait, where?
Demo 2.
It's weird. I just downloaded.
I'm there.
Which one is it?
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's funny. Pretty sure that Sorry.
Hey, there are 2 copies now. No, that's not
Where
me.
is it? Oh, yeah, it's still.
It's still not there.
Okay.
Almost 80%. Yeah, so my presentation brings in the domain of archaeology, or discipline, which might be foreign to many in the audience here, but totally relevant to the topic of music technology and the design of music technologies, because humans have quite possibly been making music for longer than we've been making language. And that's another debate for another conference. But my demo today is going to show you some actual experiments with 3,000-year-old conch shell horns from the Andes. As you see, myself here playing a replica Strombus pututu, as they're called in the Peruvian Andes, and also some snuff tubes for hallucinogenic ingestion of substances that were used in the past that are probably beautiful whistles or flutes too. So there's some interesting stuff to be experienced. So just a little primer on archaeology. It's a social science, it's inferential, we can't prove anything, but we try to bring together little fragments of context and make a story up about it. And it is based on reality, and we kind of figure out what human beings have done in other places and other times to draw analogies and fill in the huge gaps. In the US, it's a subfield of anthropology. In other places, it often falls into other disciplines like art history or classics. Multidisciplinary. And music archaeology is an interesting field because there's a thread that comes a bit from historical musicology, but also there are new techniques, especially computational and analytical techniques being applied now, and acoustics. I'm really interested in material dynamics and performance studies, and also integrating that with context. So, what are the spatial acoustics doing for the things that we can learn about how the instruments work and how people play them? So here you see computer musician Perry Cook, some of you might know, performing a 3,000-year-old conch shell horn in the Andes with a whole bunch of microphones stuck in various places of the vibrating air column, including his mouth, which is pretty neat. And just to note that ethnomusicologist Tom Turino calls music is social life. Do we agree? Here are some 3,000-year-old conch shells from the Andes, all really decorated, and they're playable. We studied them in 2008 with Perry Cook, and we also continue to study them. They're depicted in the same site, in these beautiful stone carvings of people-ish people with wings. And when you're studying materials, it's helpful to think about the ways that humans interact with materials, and some of you have already used the term in this conference of affordances, so how the properties of materials enable you to do particular things with them. And these don't change with the observer, but they can be actuated differently by different people. This comes from perceptual psychologist Gibson in the 70s. So for these conch shell horns in the Andes at the site Chavín de Huántar, We measure their sounding tones, so that's the most readily produced tone that relates to the size and the shape of the internal cavity, which is, in these instruments, basically a spirally wound cone. And this particular instrument, one of 21, has a peak frequency that's approximately in the center of all of the sounding tone frequencies of each of the instruments. So if you're going to sort them based on low to high pitch or tone, pitch sort of derived from this fundamental frequency that makes them sound pretty tonal. You see the really nice clean harmonic, the spectrum there. You would put this one in the middle, so maybe it's kind of iconic for the range. And so we study them in relationship to the places they may have been played 3,000 years ago. There's this 4.5 meter tall granite monolith that's deep inside this building, and yet its mouth is aligned with these strange ducts that go out to an exterior plaza where we have stone carvings of people playing these instruments and fossil snail shells embedded in the floor and a closet of them discovered kind of to the side of the plaza. So it gives us a context for thinking about how they were used. We fast forward 2,000 years, we're in the Inca. Suddenly we have historical documents after the Andes were colonized by the Spanish, and we get this signaling instrument idea. So all these things can do is call over long distances because they're powerful, but in the same document, which is always overlooked by researchers, you have people playing them in a kind of emotive, effective way. And so, you know, we have this idea that there's affect, there's expression, there's this kind of perhaps what we might in our present day communal understanding of music consider to be expressively musical. So what if we take these ideas from music and the tools that we use to start understanding better and giving archaeology a more ample set of tools for understanding human music making in the past with instruments with the same kinds of sophisticated ways of thinking about music making and design of sounds that we have now. So come see my demo, listen to people playing these instruments. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we continue to the next paper, which is Network Performances with OSIA Score by Jean-Michel Chelerier and Pia Balthazar. No, it should be that one because Roman.
Thanks. Hi everybody, so I'm Pierre Balthazar. I'm from the OSIA.io organization in France and Canada. And so I'm going to say a few words about like networking performances with OSIA Score. So maybe for those of you who never heard of it, OSIA Score is an interactive sequencer for the intermediate arts. In other words, it's an offering environment for designing interactive scenarios, for involving a variety of media, and also allowing to control third-party devices and applications. It's based on the iScore model, designed by Myriam de Sainte-Catherine et al. in the 2000s. And initially, the model was intending to fuse the opposite paradigms of like the continuous timeline and a series of discrete events. And it was later extended with Jean-Michel Chelerier to combine temporal flows with data flows. Somehow it combined the possibility to patch time and to patch data. And this opened up for directly scripting media from within the environment. So what we did lately, for several reasons, notably like having to work remotely together because of the pandemics, we have been working on adding features for the remote collaborative offering and performance of scenarios in OSIA Score. So this required two sets of features in line to the way Score works. So first, the collaborative remote scenario offering, which is based on a server-client architecture. in order to allow like this collaborative edition offering. And yeah, so one thing that we did and that you'll see in the short demo is that we can disengage the edition. So you can write main scenario, and some parts are edited or executed in different ways across computers. So basically, it's just like trying to do it a la Google Docs somehow. And the other thing is like the distributed execution of our WebSockets of these scenarios. So the principle is that we can have shared or free scenarios, so that can happen together or be completely autonomous. And in the case of shared scenarios, we can synchronize triggers, like because basically how score works, it's composed of like layers of time, temporal layers, which we call intervals, and you can trigger these intervals and kind of make multi-layered time. And we can also synchronize those intervals, like on a smaller grain. And we can also have shared data. Like for example, if people are playing with interfaces on different computers across the web, we can find ways to combine this different data. So I'm just going to show 1 minute video showing the thing. So this is, how do I stop? Yeah. So this is the application, and this is a new experimental thing, which is like running the application in a web browser. So basically, it can be run on both sides, and we have the same scenario on both. So it's just a stupid synth in it, and so yeah, when it's played on one end, it also plays on the other end, and the controls are acting on both scenarios. Here it's on the same machine, but it could be over the web, yeah. And so you see, when we add some modules or plugins, it's added on both sides, and the controls of these modules are also synchronous. And so it plays together. Sound is ugly. We agree. And the interesting thing is that we can disengage the control of one of the scenarios, and now what happens on this instance of score will not happen on the other one. So like people can have like different interpretations of the same processes basically. So yeah, that was it. And come and see and trade for yourselves on a booth in the lobby. So thank you.
Thank you very much. The next paper is titled The Acceptable Range of Pitch Frequencies and Duration of Notes in Singing by Benham Fagig and Joseph Timony. Also not present. Did in the meantime the authors of the paper we skipped arrive? Nicola Privato, Omar Rampado, or Alberto Novello? Also not. Then we continue to the next paper. That is Thomas Rushton and Dan Overholt with the paper The Springamajig, a Flexible Digital Musical Instrument. Nice.
Okay, thank you very much for having me today. My name is Thomas Rushton, and I'm here to present the thing you saw me wander down the stairs with, which is a novel digital musical instrument called the Springamajig, which I developed at Aalborg University. I'm a student on the SMC program there, with the support of Dan Overholt. So, approaching the design of the instrument, big priority for me was to create an effortful interface. So, could be that flexible, effortful might be the more accurate name, but that was a big priority for me. And I was drawn to these couple of quotes here from Peter Bennett and his colleague's paper on Damper, a platform for effortful interface development, referring to the importance of not only effort on the part of the performer for their own kind of appreciation of the musical activity of performance, but also vicarious performance on the part of the audience. So there's something seemingly compelling about observing a performer is engaged in effort in the act of music creation. So I went spring hunting. I found this, or I was pointed towards this workshop in Copenhagen, which, quite peculiar, I suppose, manufactures only springs of various kinds. So I got some prototypes that way. But ultimately, the design is based around a piece of exercise equipment, which you can see in the lower image there. Okay, so a little on the construction. It has a modular design, which really helped in terms of transporting it from Denmark to here, and trains and planes and things. It's also, as you can see, it's self-contained. I didn't have to worry about running through speakers here, because it has its own little inbuilt speaker and power source. And so here's a schematic representation of the instrument. So it's got these two handles. One is really just there for symmetry. This one here. And the other side is the active handle, which contains there's an accelerometer in there. There's an A2S microphone. Within the spring itself, sort of gauging the amount of bend in the spring, is a flex sensor. These sources, and there's also an FSR, I should add as well, between the inner and outer parts of the active handle. That data is passed to a Teensy 4.0 microcontroller, which is running in the little box at the end, and power supply, amplifier, loudspeaker. So the sonification engine is essentially, it's a granular type sound engine written in Faust, and depending on the bend of the spring, you'll get greater or lesser grain density, grain duration. You can also change the playback rate of the grains by altering the orientation of the instrument. But you can come and speak to me about the mappings later, perhaps. Okay, so construction issues and transportation issues and scope of future work. The flex sensor has a habit of rotating within the spring itself, and that ultimately causes why is the twist, context to short or break. This was the scene at 10 o'clock this morning that greeted me. I'd attempted to integrate this rotating barrel connector to get around this issue and found that it was not sufficiently robust, so some last minute repairs were required. And one of my colleagues in SMC saved my bacon today, let's put it that way. Yes, so definitely scope for improving things from an engineering perspective. But let's talk about performance techniques. That's my favorite one, and I do have other outfits, I promise. But let's see, I mean, obviously you can bend the spring, and as I said, that will change grain density, grain duration. You can also bend and hold, and that can freeze the grain lookup table, which is sort of constantly being written to from the little microphone. Yeah, raising and lowering to change the pitch, the speed of the grains. You can dangle it, that's fun. You can also whistle, speak into the microphone. That sound will be captured. I've also had a good time playing with instrumental musicians and picking up the sound of, say, a piano, and then manipulating that. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much. By all means, come and give it a try afterwards.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you. Then we go to the next paper, which is called Stoybox XYZ and Stoybox Spring by Benjamin Stoya and Dan Overholt.
Okay, hi. So I'm going to present two instruments today that I created with supervision from Dan Overholt during my first semester at the SMC master's program at Aalborg University. So I'm first going to talk. Oh, should probably. Oh, file view. Cool. So I would first talk about this Storybox XYZ, which is a polyphonic desktop synthesizer, and the main feature of it is this XYZ controller, which is created using like a capacitive touch sensor with Trill Square from Bella, who was also present at the conference. And underneath, I then have like a Hall effect sensor and a magnet and spring mechanism to sense the C dimension. And then it also features this menu system, which you can use to both like custom map the XYZ controller, so you can map each dimension to various synth and effects parameters. And let me see, and you can set parameter boundaries, so with upper and lower boundaries, and you can do LFO mapping and change the LFO shape, apply a pitch envelope, and add effects, which include reverb, chorus, and overdrive. And then there's 16 knobs for controlling for the oscillator. You have like a wave shape, pulse width modulation, and oscillator sync. You have a low pass filter, an LFO rate and amount, filter envelope, and an amplitude envelope. So now I'm just going to play a quick video of performance of this. And then I also brought with me this Storybox Spring, which is both like a standalone feedback instrument, but it also works as an insert effect. And the concept behind this is that I've kind of taken the spring reverb effect and then extended upon it by adding feedback, so the output of the spring reverb goes back into itself, and then you can add effects to the feedback path to kind of animate this reverb. And some features about it has like adjustable feedback amount, which goes into, can set the springs into self-oscillation. You can change the amount of feedback delay, and then it also has a pitch shifter, where you can control the tuning of the pitch shifter and the dry red, ring modulation, which can be turned on and off, a low pass filter, which can both be placed at the input of the spring reverb tank or at the output, and an LFO, which like multiple LFO shapes and which can be mapped to both the filter cutoff and the pitch and the feedback delay. And then I'm gonna go off with a quick video of this. I will set up both instruments at the booth afterwards, so you can come and play them, or if you have questions about them, come and talk to me. And yeah.
Thank you, Benjamin. Then we have arrived at the very last presentation of the conference, which is on Couplen, a hands-on physical model by Gabriel Gustafsson, Marco Timossi, and Thomas Rushton.
Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabriel Gustafsson, together with Thomas Rushton and Marco Timossi. We are students from the Sound and Music Computing Master's Program at Aalborg University, today to present our instrument that we worked on for the past couple of months. So Couplen is a fully embedded musical instrument that seeks to explore and redefine interface design for physical modeling synthesis, built upon exploratory interdependent framework coupled with novel interaction methods with physical modeling synthesis and physical model that matches the explorative path of the interface. In short, it has an approachable interaction. So as I said, you can tap it, touch it, twist it, interact with it in several different combinations, which allows for a pretty high degree of subtlety in the control. And finally, due to the nature of our sound engine, we can reach a pretty broad palette of sonic possibilities.
So in its current state, Couplen can be divided into two functional parts. The upper body is the interactive part, and it features a custom designed and built capacitive grid that is sustained by this disc mounted against the lower body by the means of elastic that provide a sort of resistive haptic feedback to the instrument, and also allow to tilt the upper body about its various axes. And Couplen uses Bella for the synthesis engine and as a main hub for sensor data streams. And in terms of the sensors, we really wanted to keep it simple, so we decided to use two sensors only. A Trilcraft capacitive touch sensors, which allows us to retrieve position on the surface and pressure, and an IMU that is mounted below the suspended disc that allows us to measure the tilt orientation and angle of the surface.
So the underlying sound engine is it's essentially a bowed stiff string model. Now I won't go into too much detail now on the equation, but suffice it to say, I guess the expressive aspects of what we've implemented are derived from the model of the bow and from the massless spring damping element. So for the bow, you can change its position, you can adjust the force and the speed of the bow. And with the damping element, there's kind of a force coefficient that's derived as a combination of a linear oscillator, a cubic nonlinear oscillator, and a localized damping element. We kind of extensively use the nonlinear element because it gives us pitch glides and interesting crunchy sounds, the kind of things you heard a moment ago. Oops, gone too far. To support development of our mappings, we created this test GUI you can see to the right here, and that allowed us to match up incoming sensor data to displacement of the string, position of the bow, of the damping element, these sorts of things. And following a scheme as described by Hunt and colleagues, we were able to sort of abstract from low-level sensor data to higher-level musical descriptors, and by an iterative process, refine the mappings.
Yeah, so basically an evaluation process followed the final completion of the prototype. And it consisted in handing in the instrument to 15 participants with various musical experiences. And the main feedback highlighted the high level of explorability of the system, both in terms of the sonic outcome and of interaction. They also highlighted that it's highly responsive and that it's fun to play. However,
we did get some more feedback, but that was kind of set as a basis for improvement, such as, on a sound lens regarding the pitch range, and then which was also related to the grid not being fully exploited, which is relative to the mapping. And finally, on a more mechanical standpoint, due to the fragility of the materials that we were using, such as copper and elastic, for stability purposes, would be a good improvement for the instrument. And that's all for us. We have a little QR code here which will lead you to a video demonstration of our instrument, and of course we'll have a little booth where you can come and play our instrument as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Before you guys go, there is one actually last presentation from the demo session yesterday on a virtual reality volumetric music video featuring New Pagans by Gareth Young, Neil O'Dwyer, and Aljosa Smolik.
Thank you very much. Another soothing British accent for you to close off with. Okay, so hello everybody, and thanks again to the organizers for allowing me to come back here today to give my presentation. This week has been problematic, to say the least. So yeah, my name is Gareth. I'm a researcher on the vSense project at Trinity College Dublin, and I'm here this year as a break from normal. I'm not talking about digital musical instruments and haptics. I'm talking about a virtual reality volumetric music video project. So vSense is a Science Foundation Ireland project, and if you Google vSense and TCD, you'll find our website. It's just you go there and check out the working volumetric content on that website, particularly in the Creative Experiments tab, where you'll find much of our research focusing on the applications of visual computing in arts practice. So I want to begin by introducing you to our creative collaborators, the New Pagans. They're a rock band from Northern Ireland, based out of Belfast, and they released their debut album last year, The Seed, The Vessel, The Roots and All, and they're on the record label Big Scary Monsters. And they use their music to challenge sort of past and present issues surrounding relationships, equality, history, and gender. And this is all wrapped up in their unique alternative post-punk indie rock style. If you think Wolf Alice, Sonic Youth with Pixies type music, then you're somewhere in the right ballpark. So the track that we worked on together was called Lily Yates, and this is Lily in the corner here. Yates is a fairly famous name in Ireland, and unfortunately Lily is less famous and is often overshadowed and overlooked because of her more famous brethren. And also the vocalist for New Pagans, Lindsay McDougall, is an embroiderer, and so we've worked hard to capture these elements within our virtual reality music video. So conceptually, this is what we were aiming for. And at vSense, we've done a lot of work on what's called volumetric video, and that's basically a three-dimensional video that you can look at and view from any perspective. And the snippet that you can see down here is our volumetric capture studio, where we captured the musicians performing within this space on a green screen background from 12 cameras, which is pretty low budget for a volumetric capture studio, if you know anything about that. And this footage is then synchronized and used to create 3D meshes that we texture on top. And then this, like I say, can be replayed and viewed from multiple perspectives. And VR is pretty good at providing that as a platform. So from the capture to the reconstruction is a very long and arduous and highly skilled task, one that is very labor intensive, and they take a long time to reconstruct. And I can say I've been a victim of that this week, that I've missed a couple of deadlines, and we're unable to show both musicians at the same time. But this is, this has been a particularly stressful week anyway. So the work to date, what I'm going to be demonstrating today is an immersive music video experience concept. And we built this in the Unity game engine, and it's built on OpenXR, so it runs in multiple headsets, hopefully. And this is the first time that we'll be showing it in the public, so that's quite an interesting one for me after 2 years of being away from the demo scene. So in the first opening scene, we allowed the user to embody and embrace their agency within virtual reality, so they can listen to music and they can sort of understand what it is to be immersed and to control the character in the game engine. In the second scene, you can kind of make out the embroidery effect that we've been working on, and the text strings. But basically, we use pagan symbology, picking up goat skulls and putting them in fires and churches, as well as the unique artwork that the new pagans and their identity is also included in there. So when the volumetric video should start, you can explore the scene and listen to the different tracks or stems from the original recording, and explore sort of spatially what they would sound like if you could move around the musicians performing. So I invite you to participate in my horror this afternoon when it all goes wrong. But we're hopefully going to make these videos available for you to download outside. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was it. I think we can all go to the demo session and try everything out. Thanks a lot.